in the year 2021, Nigeria announced a transition from fossil fuels and carbon economy over to the net zero economy by 2060. And there has been a lot of conversations around that. Well, how far so far? What has Nigeria done in its transition process, and what is left for Nigeria to do to eventually hit the target of a net zero Nigeria by 2060? And joining me now is an energy consultant, Desmond Agboifo. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily.
Very well, thank you so much, and it's good to have me on the show. Thank you.
You heard my introduction, and I had talked about how Nigeria had, of course, assented to the transition from carbon economy to a net zero economy by 2060 to 2070. And there has been a lot of conversations and, decisions regarding that. But let's hear from you, from your lens as an energy analyst. How far so far?
Great, thank you. I think the issue around the energy transition, particularly in Nigeria and in the wider world, has come a long way. We just concluded the COP28 session, which also spoke to the broader objectives of this net zero emission target. But narrowing down to the Nigerian focus, as we know very well, that Nigeria is one of the biggest emitters of poisonous gases just in the continent. And the goal of this whole discussion of transition could not be complete without us talking about the NTP, the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, which was instituted in the last administration. And so far, so good. To the question, there have been a lot of progress, and there's been a lot of activity to drive that conversation forward. And of course, the efforts are perhaps commendable, or there's still a lot of room for improvement as it is. So very specifically, we know very well that most of the activities that brought us on emissions are tied to the fact that Nigeria as a nation is very big on oil and gas and exploration projects. And from the last report from with McKinsey, that was last year, I think, or last 2 years, I think, yeah. And it was very clear that Nigeria does almost 45% of the African emissions. So of course, that's also the fact that we need to get our ducks in a row and try to get that reduced to pressure within, so can be able to achieve bigger targets for the country and for the continent of Africa.
Well, it's no longer news that Nigeria's main source of income is the oil industry, speaking about oil exploration. And as we speak right now, there are talks around, having a test run for the Dangote refinery in Lagos and also starting up the other refineries we have across the country. How then can Nigeria, strike that balance between oil exploration and achieving this goal for renewable energy?
Great. Well, the Dangote narrative comes with a lot of mixed match messages of if we are in the right path towards transition or not. But very clearly, the transition always should be an issue of a progress. That is steady, and in my view, should not be just the pie in the sky approach. So clearly, the Dangote's project that does just around 650,000 barrels per day capacity of refining have seen about the fourth or fifth container ship of 1 million barrels of oil. And be that as it may, as much as oil that emits most of the emissions we see, will always send a message that there's been some increased activities in production towards trying to produce and get it refined for other sectors. It also comes with a message of some word of caution, because much as the oil production in Nigeria is just about to be a bit steady, as much as about 1.4 million barrels or so per day, I think the bigger issue or the bigger concern would be how well are we driving our gas conversation? Because the gas is really something that Nigeria as a nation should dwell a bit more on. And just out of context, let me paint a very clear analysis just to drive this point forward. I think it was last 2 administrations that sanctioned the ticket of gas, whereby we need to drive more gas conversation projects. And there are studies within the International Energy Agency that says that Nigeria is a gas economy as opposed to oil. And clearly, for every barrel of oil we have 1,000 more gas. So the gas is something that we should take very seriously and drive conversations on. But unfortunately, the gas is being plagued by a lot of concerns towards investment and even apathy towards interest in utilization, for example, CNG of the day and things like that. And those are some of the initiatives that will drive our conversation on gas forward. Until we do this correctly and clearly, we will always have that issue of trying to produce more of oil as opposed to produce more of gas. And gas is cleaner, gas is much more environmentally friendly, and it's also a much more stable fuel. And clearly, we have it even more in abundance. So I think it's something that we should take very seriously, and that should be the story of the day towards net zero emissions and towards trying to decarbonize our industry.
Well, I love that you made mention of gas and the potentials inherent in the gas industry in Nigeria, compared to the oil sector. Seeing that we have this lacuna in terms of conversations around, gas, oil, and the likes, how feasible or how realistic is this net zero goal? Looking at 2060, barely, I should say, about 40-something years to go. How feasible is this goal for Nigeria as a country?
Great. I think that to be very honest, that's quite a feasible objective. But the bigger issue will be that the enablers, the champions, and the actors will get their hands or they'll get their sleeves rolled up to ensure that we get this to be actualized. Already the bigger questions around trying to achieve that goal brought out a bit more on financing. As it were, right now we are looking at almost 410 billion naira worth of investment that is required in the next few years. Another study that someone upon stated around $20 million needed just to drive gas in the next 10 years. So the key thing is once we're able to get those kind of investments in place, we'll be able to drive the conversations in areas of power, in area of electricity, and even area of consumption for us to be able to be a much more stable economy in terms of our consumption. Because if we don't do that, then the goal will be a bit further than where, as I said, yes, about 30, 40 years is quite a long time, but it's not too long in terms of investment and planning, because that also drives a lot of conversations. And let me also speak to the fact that there's about $23 billion, according to the investment memorandum that's released by the NUCP, that speak to issues around generation, just about $11 billion. We have transmission, about $2.5 billion. We have new distribution connections, about just about $1 million or so. We have clean cooking options, about just about $1.8 billion. And we have just about $23 billion needed for investment opportunities to drive that goal towards the 2020 ambition. So clearly, this also calls for government and the private sector to work hand in hand to be able to achieve this goal. This is quite a lot of funds to raise, but the implementers who are going to be the government entities must be a bit more flexible to provide incentive in fiscal provisions and to tax holidays to attract meaningful investment in gas so that we can achieve this goal. In fact, there's actually a document that has been released, I think in the public space already, that speaks to the net goal to zero, how we can achieve it. So this speaks to your question exactly. But the key message on that document, which I was a part of, was to achieve, to spend almost about 24 billion US dollars to get us to that goal.
Well, you've talked about the role that government has to play in scaling up, renewable energy, and also you touched on the role that the private sector has to play as well, financing and all of that. But let's bring it home to, I'll say, the average Nigerian who's probably watching us now. Is there anything that I personally can do from my own home, to scale up or to just make sustainable business options and sustainable living options from the comfort of my home? What would your advice be to such a person who's wondering how they can contribute to scaling up the renewable energy policy for Nigeria?
Great. The energy policy will be focused on our discussions towards achieving our goals. Some of the efforts that we can do is support the project that will be able to keep us in in a stable landscape towards gas legalization. I think for me, I'll speak more on how we can be able to achieve more gas legalization. So it's often useful when you look at the comparative advantages of gas versus oil. Gas is cheaper, gas is cleaner. So I would advocate that most of the industries and most of the consumers who typically use fossil fuels for their generation of power and consumption to switch to gas. And clearly, there's a big gas narrative right now going in Nigeria towards CNG. I'll encourage everyone from small scale to large scale to embrace the benefits of gas and all of those gas monetization options. The government has done a good job to provide options for monetization. So we've seen the last year, I think, we had about 42 companies has been awarded a license to be able to turn flare gas to value. So that shows that from the common man's perspective, gas should be cheaper. And then I also want to use this opportunity to ensure that people should look at the options of gas cleaner. Not because there's perhaps a perceived notion of switching costs, but it's also cleaner, it's cheaper, and of course it's much more affordable. Thank you.
Indeed, Nigeria on its way to achieving the net zero emissions target for 2060. I, from my own comfort of my home, can choose sustainable options such as using gas instead of fossil fuels. Thank you, Desmond Agboifo, energy consultant, for joining us on Business Daily this morning.
Thank you and have a good day. Thank you so much.
And this is the point where we draw the curtains on today's edition of the program Business Daily, coming to you on Trust TV. We will be back with you again tomorrow, but for now, join the conversation on social media and let's discuss in relation to the conversations that we had on the program this morning, talking about the net zero emissions target, as well as the all-share index for the NGX hitting 80,000 for the first time ever. My name is Chiamaka Nendu. Thank you for watching.